Good evening, everyone. I just want to say hello to my sister in New York. Hi, Di. Thank you for coming tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Before we start, oh, yeah, I got to remember there's a microphone here. Okay. I'd like to thank my publisher, Mosaic Press, for believing in my writing and investing a lot of dollars in this book. And distribution is going to be in Canada, USA, and UK. So I'm quite pleased about that. I'd like to thank also the people at Shelf Life Books, especially for June, who's done all the hard work in getting this organized. Is Ann Burke here today? Ann? She's not here, right? Okay, there's a big crowd here. Okay, thank you. All right. A little bit about Canalwatch. What is this thing anyway? Oh, I got to stop doing that? When am I going to learn? Hey, guys? You're on the air, Ken. All right. Basically, this is a book of flash fiction, which really means it's a 500-word story, okay? A moment around these canals, all right? Most of the stories originate from a canal in Hawaii called the Alloway Canal on the island of Oahu. Others come from other canals I've seen in France or in any other countries, even canals in San Antonio, Texas. You know, there's canals everywhere. Each story captures a moment. So the reader is invited to sit in the moment and experience the story. I'm really, I guess, observant. I don't know if I should say I'm observant, but I really am intrigued by human vulnerability when people are vulnerable. And vulnerability can show itself in anger or frustration or humor or sadness. That to me is worth writing about. And a lot of my books, I have done that because there's something incredibly beautiful about the human spirit when we're awkward, when we're shy, when we're angry, when we're sad, when we're delighted, when we're reflective about certain issues. But to me, it's always been a real beauty since I was 12 years old. I was in grade 6 or 7, I remember, and I was writing a story about a bear chasing me to the edge of a cliff. The teacher walked by and said, "Hey, what's going to happen to that bear?" And I said, "That's for me to know and you to find out." And he says, "You know what, one day you might be a writer, Ken." And I was 12 years old. And I never forgot that teacher. That's a long time ago. All right. I'm going to start off. I'm just going to read a few stories out of here for you, and you're going to have a chance to ask questions afterwards. Feel free to ask any questions you want, and I will be as open and honest as I can with you. And if I can't answer your question, I'll tell you I can't answer that right now. All right. This whole book began with an image. I was walking along this canal, and this guy was coming towards me on a beat-up old red bike. The paint was peeling off the fenders. He had a Coleman cooler under his arm like this, a bicycle basket. In the basket, he had a couple of scrunched up brown bags and a Barbie doll next to it, lying down with a patch on her eye. And this is how this story came to be. All right. I was walking. The guy was coming this way. He slowed down. And do you know how many of you use cameras a lot? Take pictures with your cell phones and have cameras. Yeah, I'm horrible with cameras, but my brain absorbs too much sometimes, I think. You take a camera, you take a picture and you go click. My brain goes click, 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 click. And I absorb a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. I don't know why that happens. It just happens. Okay, that's how I became a writer, probably, partially. So this story is called Hungry for Love. Someone is hungry for love. Along the canal, a man too tall for his bicycle rides in a slow weave, as if attached to his neck is the longest silk scarf imaginable. Suddenly, he stops not far from me. His bike is painted red and is faded by years of sun, while the paint from his fenders clings like loose scabs. He carries a small aging green Coleman cooler in one hand, while his other hand clings to the handlebar. In his basket are 2 brown paper bags filled with mysterious shapes. One of the bags is larger than the other, and its opening at the top is all scrunched up and pokes at the sky as a corrugated toy chimney. Lying across the bag is the Barbie doll, which has only one eye, a left eye. Barbie's clothes are worn thin, the colors faded into a pinkish red. Over the missing right eye is a new flesh-colored bandage. The man stops and checks his doll's bandage as if he knows that Barbie can only handle one half of its perception of the world. After each bump, he probably slowed down and may have said to the toy doll, "Sorry about the rough ride." The toy could be his only child now, or perhaps it is easier to pretend and protect something that can't talk back. I want Barbie to respond to him as I stand there, but the toy gives me a blank, one-eyed look as if I should be the one apologizing for its rough ride. I stop and the man asks me, "Where do you live?" "Calgary, Alberta." I say, "Western Canada." "Is that close to the Rocky Mountains, like Denver?" "Yes, a city something like Denver, only north." "Well, I was born right here and I ride around this canal once a day, hoping. You see, this doll belonged to my little daughter who drowned last year in this canal. Her body was never found." "So what happened?" I asked, gently, hoping not to sound intrusive. "One time I'd had too much to drink and went out for a walk with my little girl. She chased a pigeon down the pathway and tripped into the canal. The water level was record high, almost flooding the area at the time. And you know how filthy that water is. So I stumbled down those cement stairs and tried to grab her, but she sank to the bottom, away from me in a surprisingly fast-moving current. Nobody could save her. She just floated away from me, and I felt it was time for her to go. I saved her Barbie doll, though, and I've been riding around the canal with the doll in my basket, hoping my daughter will somehow float back into my life," he says solemnly as he grips a handlebar. "And I have to watch for the cops because this pathway is for pedestrians only, not bikes, as if that's going to stop them." It seems as if the sun has been listening to him. Its rays reach down, scoop up his sorrow, and spread it along the murky canal like butter. "I should get going," says the man. "Thanks for listening." "You're welcome," I say. "Before you go, what's in that small cooler and those brown bags?" "A few sandwiches and a bottle of water in case my daughter comes back to life. She'll be starving. The bags have some dry clothes and shoes for my girl and some extra Barbie doll clothes." Pedaling away towards the sun, the man disappears behind a haze. It is so quiet now, except for what could be measured sobbing from a passing empty canoe. Someone is hungry for love. As readers, I only have one request. When you read this book, you can ask yourself, could this happen around a canal? Is there some kind of credibility here? Besides the fact that a crazy imaginative guy wrote the book, okay. Okay. Sometimes writers get ideas from photographs. And our man here tonight, Dave Foray, sitting right over there, he gave me a picture of women sitting at a bar around a canal. And there was a bar very close to this one canal that I'm talking about. And so it's called Women Telling Women. In a cafe on the boulevard, just south of the canal, a group of women share lunch, and the conversation around their table could light up the sky. The youngest woman, perched on a brown leather stool cushion, is somewhat removed from the group, and her dress is so short her thighs never end. With her right foot turned partially upward, an ankle bracelet hangs like a coded message to the sun. This woman has her back to a yellow wall that holds a shadow of a menu opened on a white wooden stand. Above the group of women, tree branches hollow out the wall, branches digging for something. Behind a spindle-covered cafe window, a lone waiter stands at a counter with a glowing light bulb over his head that may be trying to highlight his thoughts. Perhaps the waiter awaits a final order from the woman outside, and he pauses while listening intently to their talking. The woman in a white blouse at the table outside has just forked some food into her mouth, and her eyes are as wide as her water glass. Above this woman's head, the shape of a large leaf stands tall, a shadow on guard duty. What is she hearing from the women dressed in dark brown directly in front of her? Hey, I caught my lover in bed with a younger woman a few nights ago. The woman in dark brown tells the group matter-of-factly. Instead of trying to make excuses, he invited me into bed with him and the younger woman. Turned out that the younger woman preferred me to my lover, so together we ignored him. As he calmly got dressed, he watched the two of us seeking pleasure that only we knew. So I'd like you to meet Lisette, my new lover, she says, pointing to the young woman with the never-ending thighs. What happened to your old lover? Another woman dressed in pale green asks. Gone forever, I hope, says a woman in a dark brown outfit. I never like sharing myself with more than one person at a time. Do you feel sad? Someone else inquires. Not in the least. Besides, he's Swiss and he's not a good lover. Maybe he should stick to being an organizer, not a drop of French blood in him. The entire table explodes with laughter, and the two of the women almost choke on their food. Let's hope that there are no Swiss people listening, one of the women says, wiping the laughter tears from her eyes. Lisette must be French. Oui, Lisette answers, from Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens, the Habs. I had to get that in there anyway. Okay. Then each woman studies one another for a brief moment in silence. Inquisitive winds curl their way across the table like tiny hands as the women finish their food and order another glass of wine. Lisette cannot take her eyes off the woman in dark brown. Anything else, the waiter asks? No, just a final glass of wine, please, the woman in pale green answers, and then our bill. Sure, hope you all have a great day. We will, Lisette and the other woman in the dark brown reply at almost the same time. Right above Lisette's head, two silhouettes on the wall become something extraordinary, something that will take more time to define. This next story, tell you the truth, I saw two boys playing with balloons on a canal wall one day, and I made up this story about it. And this is what happened from a solid image, one particular image. Every story in here started with an image, something that I saw, and I either expanded into a story, or actually saw something happen, or I overheard a partial conversation. There are such things as peeping Toms. I think I'm a peeping Ken. Okay. All right, here we go. Balloons. Just make sure the strings are long enough, he says. A boy wearing a bright red baseball cap is perched with his feet dangling over the canal water. In his left hand are the strings of 3 balloons and 2 yellow balloons. Hanging from his right shoulder is a brown canvas backpack shaped like a hiker's heart. Clinging to the right side of his face is a tear large enough to contain the story of his life. Is this tear impossible to tie to the end of a string as a 6th balloon? Even if I sat on a stool inside the boy's head, I couldn't possibly know what motivates him and his balloons to think, feel, or act like he does right now. Above the boy, the sky is confused and is colored in swirling yellow, gray, and blue with sunlight poking through in several places. Making its own request, the sky may want that tear to either plop down into the canal or go back to where it came from, if that were possible. Something has to be done as the tear is swelling its way across the boy's cheek. Can gloom expand like that? Can it be so transparent yet never disappear? After clearing my throat, I asked the boy if he needs help. Oh, no thanks, mister, he says, turning his face towards me. That's a huge tear on your face. Are you hurt? Not sure. I'm celebrating my little brother who died of leukemia 5 years ago. 1 balloon a year is how I remember him. Then I release each balloon one by one, and the wind takes care of the rest. What about that big fat tear on your face, I ask. That's new as of today. It just clings to my face. The wind doesn't help. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to touch it. And I'm out of balloons, he says. Try facing the sun directly and stay that way, I offer. Maybe the heat will help. Sure, I'll try that. The tear, now the size of the bottom of a teacup, gradually evaporates until the boy's face is as dry as sunlight. How's that tear? I ask. Gone away, the boy replies, opening his canvas bag. I'm looking for more balloons now. Any luck? Nope. Maybe next year I'll bring extras just in case. Good idea, I say. The sun now covers his face entirely, and his eyes are firmly closed. Moments later, he gets to his feet with both eyes wide open. Looking down at the canal, the boy checks his reflection in the water. Next time I'll be ready, he says. Don't want to sound mushy, but I never had such a big tear that wouldn't budge. Even though I don't cry for my little brother that often anymore, shouldn't tears just fall? Maybe sometimes gravity is foreign to tears. Time for me to get going. I appreciate your help, the boy says. Well, you helped me too, I reply. How? Well, for years I've been trying to understand the weight of sadness. Just make sure the strings are long enough, he says. It's not all sad and gloomy. It's okay, there's a little person coming up to stand beside me right now. She inspired this story. She's also my granddaughter, Miranda. Give her a hand, please. You know, when kids are little, when they're 6, 7, 8, they take over the room sometimes and they pretend they're a school teacher or a school mom or something. So you sit over there and you do this and be ready to move there. And, you know, so she inspired this story, but she's not that way now. It's called From the Walls of the Garden Sky from Miranda. Let me be a mushy grandpa just for about 4 minutes. So then that's it. I'll move on. Okay. You never know, the grandfather says, you never know. The granddaughter, who might be 6 or 7 years of age, and her grandfather sit together in an act of love on a wooden bench in his tiny garden. I will tell everyone where they should be and what they should be doing, the little girl exclaims. It will be like playing school, Grandpa. I'll be the teacher and everyone else will be my students. The garden has flowers growing from dark topsoil and green plastic pots that hang everywhere. The soil below appears to be barren except for a few scattered unused flower pots. I love your garden, the little girl says. Excuse me. Okay, where am I here? Okay. Yeah, it looks like flowers grew up from the walls of the sky. Maybe the plants could be my students and I will show them how to grow. I'm just going to grab some water here for a second. Sorry, man. Hang in there. Right? Okay, here we go. The grandfather smiles at the perfect afternoon while the sky responds with a long cloud looking like a slow-moving parade floating and drifting across his line of vision. Forcing anyone or anything to grow is not easy, but you may be the first one to accomplish that, the grandfather says, caressing and then kissing the top of the young girl's head. Nothing you do will surprise me. You know, I've seen you talking to plants, Grandpa. I should speak to them too. Go ahead, the grandfather replies, but don't shout. Why? Ears don't work well with shouting. The granddaughter stands in front of their bench and sighs deeply. Then she rubs her hands together and moves slowly to the furthest wall of hanging plants, the wall facing the canal. Her lips move ever so slightly as if she were rehearsing her wisdom for the world. Then she drops her head and turns it slightly to the left. Perhaps she thinks her whispering can only be heard by the plants and her. The girl's words at first are tender breaths, but leaves become ears that aren't quite listening. The granddaughter knows it. She raises her voice, pointing to one plant. She says, hey, your leaves should be growing that way, straight up to the sun and maybe to the moon. And you over here, you're looking a little crooked here. So gesturing towards the second plant, the little girl says, and you have to grow towards the canal to catch the morning light. The granddaughter moves from plant to plant, giving instructions to each one until she's back on the bench with her grandpa. How did it go with the plants? The grandfather asked. I heard a bit of your whispering, your take charge words. When they're ready, they'll do exactly what I ask. They have to be ready though, she says. Were they? Grandpa asked. Actually, I only had to repeat myself once. You should have seen those leaves listening. How do you know? When I whispered thank you to each plant, the veins on the leaves turned up like tiny fingers. Sounds good to me, Grandpa answers. They know you're in charge. Yes, but we'll have to come back tomorrow, the granddaughter says, straightening out her tiny shoulders to make sure, as if there is nothing further from the truth than sentiment. You never know, the grandfather says. You never know. Pretty cool, boy. I like the taste of their heads. You know, when you kiss them on top of the head, if there was 10 little girls in a room, I would know which one is Miranda's. She has that certain taste, you know, from the top here. Here's a story about a homeless family living in trees. And some canals do have them. Oops, I better get over here. Depending on the canal, some canals are strictly for irrigation, for example, and they may have bike paths. The canals, the main canal, the one in Hawaii that I'm talking about, has, it's like a subculture. Like there's all kinds of stuff going on around this canal. People living in tree forts, all kinds of different types of homeless people. There's a number of stories in here that you'll read about homeless people. And I struck up a conversation with and just made up a story about. This one here jumps out at me because it's an actual take, watching a family living in the branches of a tree. It's called Branches. You must be hungry, she says. Right where the path turns north from the canal, there is a small makeshift house cupped in the arms of a tree. The roof is a huge beach umbrella made of blue, green, red, and orange triangles. Beneath the rainbow roof are 4 canvas walls. A sheet of gray canvas makes up the first wall. A second wall is all green material from a leftover tent. Bark brown canvas creates a third wall. The front of the treehouse is white canvas with a flap for the front entrance. Several short 2x4 pieces of wood tied together with rope make up the front porch. On a lower branch, a young woman scrubs her wet laundry with a white soap bar, dunks everything into a large white plastic bucket almost filled with water, and then rinses it all out into the canal below. The young woman has dark, shiny eyes the color of coffee, and her long black hair is swept back over her shoulders as an afterthought. She is dressed in a white linen top and white linen pants, which are streaked with dirt. Her face invented happiness, you know that? And her clearly defined features may be a byproduct of this contentment. The woman's fingers are long and noticeably slender and could easily belong on any keyboard. Meanwhile, her partner, dressed in a ragged jean shorts and a soiled white t-shirt, cleans fish for their breakfast and dumps all the innards into the canal. His knife gleams in rays of sun, and his cutting is quick and confident. What will they use to cook the fish, or will they eat them raw? The partner is slow, methodical, and he too has noticeably long, slender fingers and dark features. Although his hair falls only to the bottom of his neck, do their elegant hands keep them together? The couple say very little to each other. Before he starts working on another fish, the man looks at his partner as if she were the only canal goddess here today. And she, in turn, returns his gaze with her own electricity. The energy between them could make the canal boil. Their tree fort lovemaking must be magical, or too predictable, perhaps. Imagine the alphabet of their passion, the sign language in their fingertips. Trees might breathe easily in the nighttime air, but then hold their breaths just as the couple explode all over each other. Down from the treehouse is a large 3-wheeled bike complete with a white license plate. The tricycle is placed at the entranceway like a family vehicle behind a clump of branches. The license plate almost glares at the world from behind the leaves. Just below the bike's handlebars droops a half-rusted steel basket. The white fenders on the bike are cleaner than the clothes they wear. A middle-aged African-American man passing by stops, notices the treehouse, and asks if I know how they were able to squeeze in all those building materials, and what do they do in the cold weather? Those thick branches would be a challenge, I reply, and the cold leaves me clueless. Should the police be notified and have another homeless shelter destroyed? Should the authorities wait until the couple are out for the day and then remove everything? No. That's been done before with little success because homeless people simply set up house somewhere else. Perhaps the police should wait until the residents are home so the couple has time to remove their belongings. Instead, the man passing by simply pushes aside several branches, moves cautiously closer, and asks, "Is anyone home?" The young woman sticks her head out from the front flap. "I really do envy your lifestyle," he declares, "the ease of it all." "You must be hungry," she says. That's how it really looked. That's really how it really looked, you know. And one time it was, believe it or not, it was a Sunday morning. No, anyway. And I was watching two boys playing on the bank of a canal, and the grass was being watered, and they were sort of, you know, boys play in the rain and they're fooling around, making faces. And they're Asian kids, and the parents were very close by, and they had these Safeway bags, you know, those plastic bags from Safeway? And they were writing notes and dropping them into these bags of Safeway bags. And I thought, what are these people doing? And this is what I made up. Nobody told, I just made this whole thing up, okay? I'm lying through my teeth. All right. But if it appears real to you guys, then it works, okay? I shouldn't be telling you all that again. All right, water prayers. It is mid-afternoon, just before the sun absolutely floods the canal. Two boys who could be brothers in shorts and t-shirts stand calmly under sprinklers, watering the grass as if they are taking a sun shower. The first boy, wearing bottle green shorts and a bright yellow t-shirt, has longish hair that half covers his ears. Holding his hands to his face to keep the water from entering his eyes, he peeks out from behind his fingers and checks on his younger brother. The younger boy, wearing pale blue shorts and a white t-shirt, has much shorter hair, and both of his hands are stretched out and facing upward. His fingers try to trap the water, and he is almost hypnotized by his efforts. Are the boys playing or praying? Meanwhile, right by the canal, their mother and father, both dressed in dark blue from head to toe, may be writing spiritual requests on slips of paper and then flinging them up into the air, watching them float over the canal and then land on the water like wafers of humility. What are they doing? They have many plastic Safeway bags already stuffed with completed slips, so their petitions might last for some time. When their first bag of requests settles on the canal water, the current seems to slow down and swallows one prayer at a time. Some slips of paper take longer to sink, and they may contain concerns that can't be addressed right away. Or maybe the couple are not ready yet for any answer. These replies might say, wait. The prayers that sink easily may have replies that say yes or no. Are they reinventing their spirituality? The couple could be saying to each other that perhaps religions are for those who are afraid to go to hell, but they have been to hell and don't want to go back. Maybe the woman had so much difficulty getting pregnant that she knows all about hell and is grateful to have been given birth to two healthy sons. And her husband might be so thankful he would have found a way to give birth to those two boys himself if that were possible. Spiritual requests for them seem to be far more than a duty. Back under the sprinklers, the two boys haven't moved. The time sprinklers are now spraying more water on them as if the sprinklers are preparing the boys for a new ritual. Both boys are simply staring up at the sky and letting the water wash over them. Then their mother's voice instructs them to fold their hands together in a pious way, and the sons do as they are told. With eyes closed and heads bowed, the boys fall to their knees and move their lips in a silent shower of devotion. The parents fling two more Safeway prayer bags over the canal. Right away, mother and father who fall to their knees to make this place a complete outdoor house of worship. There is no priest, minister, or rabbi. Nobody is dressed in their Sunday best on this morning. No pulpit. No one is preaching or requesting money. No choir or hymns. There are only 4 members in this congregation. Extending quiet wishes to the family are armfuls of generous sunlight. This may be a celebration of water, of light, an easy way water and sun understand acceptance. On their feet, each grabbing the remaining Safeway prayer bags, they give a final fling. Then the family bows empty-handed at the passing current. No one needs a burning bush to appear or a white mist to cover the canal. No one looks disappointed, as if they all have no expectations, no dependencies, and no demands in their own immaterial world. It is mid-morning, just before the sun floods the canal. Okay, yeah. There's a whole bunch I want to read, but I want to leave some time for questions and answers. And yeah, faces here I haven't seen for a while, and a good crowd. I didn't pay anybody to come, did I? Okay. Okay, I have a couple more here. This is probably the easiest story in the whole book for me to write. Again, it comes from a photograph. His name is Joe Harley, sitting right back there underneath that grin of his. And he's quite good with a camera, but it's amazing how stories come to be. Joe gave me a photograph of the stairs leading down somewhere. It could have been anywhere. It could have been somewhere in Turkey or anywhere in the world. So I just took his photograph and said, hey, what if these stairs were leading down to the canal? And there's Joe. I put Joe in the story too. Anyway, so I'm sure, I hope he doesn't mind. Okay, it's called Stairs for Joe Harley. The cement stairs leading down to the darkness of the canal become more orange the further down the man with the silver hair looks. The orange must not be blood, because blood turns a deeper red when exposed to the air, all due to the hemoglobin. No murders or suicide here. Maybe the stairs were once painted orange to celebrate an artist's accomplishments. Once upon a time, there may have been an explosion of cheer, optimism, and flamboyance on these stairs. Perhaps the silver-haired man stood here before on a top step, contemplating his descent with his feet shuffling back and forth like his thoughts. And that is why the top step has little color left, especially in a certain sunlight. He remains where he is, wooden cane in hand, because at the bottom of the stairs, it may be more than just canal water. Maybe the man remembers as a boy looking under his bed at night, making sure there was nothing there. Did he once slide under his bed to join the unknowns because his tough as nails mother told him to face his fears after she caught him checking under his bed? Today, there is no bed, but the silver-haired man wishes there was one. At the bottom, there are hollow unknowns, unresolved questions. Every imaginable under-the-bed creature awaits his descent. If these stairs could talk, might they be self-indulgent, superficial, overbearing, insincere, or overly proud? Who knows? The language of the stairs is ambiguous at best. Walls surrounding the stairs have occasional scars on the top and bottom, as if parts of the man's skin were originally used to paper the wall. Yes, he has his scars, like all of us. Perhaps the man with the silver hair had sections of his skin torn off by those demanding perfection from him. Maybe the man wears his heart not only on his sleeve, but wherever his skin is exposed to the harsh light of expectations. When the man with the silver hair takes his first step down to the canal, he limps slightly and swings his cane back and forth in front of him. He may be cautioning himself that he is moving downward through a giant black keyhole. Then courage takes him right down the stairs. Once he's past the keyhole, the silver-haired man slips into the canal and his uneven gait disappears in the water. There he lies on his back with his wet silver hair forming glowing quotation marks around his head, which is now a photographer's aura. Soon he floats westward toward a larger body of water, his eyes constantly flicking as if taking photos of an optimistic sky. Just before he reaches the open water, he swims to shore, climbs easily onto dry land. His limp is now totally gone. Wow. With his shoulders back and his head tall, he walks straight ahead and exaggerates the lifting of each of his legs, like a goose step, as if he's ready for any stairs. The silver-haired man does not look behind or under beds, benches, bushes, trees, or rocks. Perhaps his imagination has been restored to a world removed from beds and stairs. When he goes to bed tonight, the silver-haired man might think of flinging his extra cane and every shoe he owns under his bed to celebrate the disappearance of his limp and for any other reason that brings simplicity to his mind. And I'll finish off with one more. Oh. Give him a hand too. This is the last one I'm going to read, and then we'll open it up to questions. Questions, if you'd like to ask any questions. And then if anybody wants me to sign their books for them, I'll gladly do it. I'm going to be back here on Friday from 5:30 to 7:30. Apparently to catch the going home from work crowd who might want to buy a book. Okay. Okay. This is a story, and I wanted to end my book on an optimistic note. I'll just let the story speak for itself. It's called My Face is Worth It. Walking away from the two men, I look over the wall, and halfway down the steps, a spider spins its silken threads with the word hope clearly in its web. Right now, the winds blow velvety across the canal, and the sun is not a giant, harsh eye. Sparkling sunshine on miniature canal waves makes me blink myself into a calm state of being here, only here. There is an inherent order in the swirls of tiny fish weaving the icons of their optimism near the canal wall. Even though today the water is filthier than ever, there is a new rhythm to its flow, as if the canal doesn't give a damn what I think. In any case, the water always turns murky after a heavy rain, so clarity may be a waste of time. As I stand on the canal wall looking downward, it feels as if all my innards have been drained into the water and taken elsewhere. Time has a new clock now, and it prepares me for the unexpected. The bank of clouds to the north becomes a duvet that covers me perfectly. I stick out my toes from under the sky quilt until my feet feel just right. Yes, I'm getting ready for something, and it's not sleep. Looking east is a reassuring act because its brown and green colors remain constant, even in varying shades of daylight. Tree shadows create a black on green cartoon as if the sky were doing a shadow puppet story of what's about to happen. And there it is, a man on the low side of 50 and dressed like Indiana Jones stops at each bench containing a sleeping homeless person and prays over each one and every dormant form. His praying is occasionally interrupted by a light rain followed by more sunbeams. When he leans over a sleeping man under a faded green tarp, the explorer takes extra time for his picture taking with a high-end camera. Then he leans closer for a second, a third, and a fourth photograph. The clicking wakes the homeless man who says, "Hey, what do you want from me?" The photographer turns, looks at me, and his face wonders what I want too. Then the homeless man looks up and says, "That's me you're taking pictures of, mister." "How much?" asks the explorer, digging into his back pocket of his perfectly wrinkled khakis. "As long as it's paper and not coins, I'll be happy," the homeless man says. "Paper it is," the photographer says. The explorer pulls out his Indiana Jones worn wallet and hands the homeless man 3 perfectly folded but different dollar bills, each one flapping in the sunlight like flags from 3 different countries. "That should do it," the homeless man says, tucking the money into his shirt pocket. "So what are you planning to do with those pictures?" "I'm hoping to enter them in a magazine contest when I return home." "Can you win money?" he asks. "First prize is $1,000, the photographer says. "In that case, I want a piece of the action if you win, and a copy of the magazine. Got that?" "Of course," says the explorer. "Half and half. My wife and I are planning to return here next year." "I'll always be here," he says. "My face is worth it. Even if I don't win, I'll be back," the photographer says. "I have to. The canal does that to me." Walking away from the two men, I look over the wall, and halfway down the steps, a spider spins its silken threads with the word hope clearly in its web. Thank you very much. Uh, just if any of you have read my last book, was called Mother Wild. It was a big, long story, a big narrative arc to it. These little stories in here have a tiny little arcs, okay, because they're just moments. Okay, anybody with questions, feel free. I'll answer them as best I can. Uh-oh. I got to watch this guy. He's a former Crown prosecutor. So
I'm not the prosecutor, but my question to you, it has to be, you told us about the different stories that you've written here, but of the stories you wrote, which one is your, not your favorite, but which one do you appreciate the most that you wrote?
That I appreciate?
Yeah, you appreciate.
Well, believe it or not, the one I read about Joe Harley's picture came so easily. Usually, you know, writers revise stories, fix them up, edit them, give them to somebody else to read, and you work with an editorial board. But the one I wrote about Joe's, the steps going down to the canal with his hair floating on the water, that one just came pure, spontaneous. I like it because maybe I edited it twice or something, small little things. I like the story about my granddaughter because she's very special. She writes with me sometimes, you know, and I take her to truck stops and we go buy secondhand books together and stuff, right? So she's pretty special. Anyway, I got to stop this grandpa stuff here. Okay, yeah.
And I noticed from what you were reading, a lot of your endings are sort of deliberately vague. I mean, maybe I'm using the wrong term, but they're not, you leave it up to the imagination of the reader as to what may occur.
Yeah.
Is that something you've done deliberately?
That was done deliberately and consciously at all times. In fact, often the first line of the story is also the same as the last line, if you've noticed that. Some are. And I love open endings in stories. There's so many different kinds of writing in stories, but primarily the first kind of story is a bed to bed story. You wake up, brush your teeth, get dressed, start your day. Something happens, so it gets worse, get settled, then you go back to bed, brush your teeth. That's called a bed to bed story. This one, I'm crazy about open endings because I like the reader to kind of play with it at the end and maybe come up with their own endings, you know. It may not be as satisfying for some readers who like to have a bed to bed kind of story, and that's fine. That's fine. Anybody else? Yes.
When do you start the audiobook?
You want to repeat that again, please?
Those stories would lend themselves to an audiobook format.
It's coming out in ebook fashion, and the audiobook is still being discussed. I think it's going to happen too.
Oh, good.
Because it's being distributed. Like the UK has a distributor, USA has a distributor, Canada, you know, it's really a bit complex for the publisher.
Right.
So they're getting all that. It's all worked out actually right now. I already got an email from a reader in Oxford, in England, you know. So you never know with books who reads them, you know. Anybody else? Yes.
Ken, I noticed, like, you know, you mentioned like a picture that Joe happened to give to you that creates something in you that says, I'm going to make a story.
Yeah,
right?
but it also happened while I was on the canal. It's not just Joe's story, but it was Joe's picture, but it's different variables, but his started it all. Yeah.
So how, like, when you write process-wise, right? Do you have a complete story in your head with an end point? Or do you start writing and see where it takes you?
You know what I love, the kind of writing, my favorite? Better talk right here. Okay. Hi, Dias. Welcome. I love when a story takes me by the scruff of the neck and takes me along for the ride, and the story develops legs of its own. You may start off with something. I may have usually an image. I'm very big on images. One image can trigger a whole ton of things for me. I could write a novel about one picture even, or a picture that I saw. But I love stories that are adventurous and risky, a little bit risky, a little wild. One of the critics already wrote, this Ken Rivard's a little bit wild here in this book, you know? And I said, oh, that's okay. But I like stories that do that because I have a fundamental belief. Some of you might not like to hear this, but I have a fundamental belief about humanity that we spend our entire lives becoming and being inhibited. And for good reason. We have families, we have kids, you got to go out and make a paycheck, and you don't have time to think too wildly, I guess. You're out there just making a living. And so the opportunity to cut loose is pure magic to me. If a story says, come on, Ken, let's go. It takes me along. And then I realized what an honor it is to be a writer, you know. Geez, I just love this stuff, you know. It just grabs me and takes me along. I said, okay, I'm going, you know, and I grab my caffeine-free Diet Pepsi and fig cookies and I go along. Okay. But I love that. I love that freedom. Okay. Anybody else? Somebody else had? Yes.
Do you see yourself in any of your characters?
Yes, I do. But I'll let you decide that when you read about it. Yes, I do. There's 3 or 4 stories in there that's really me talking. Otherwise, I make up stuff. If I make up stuff, I find my writing is better because you can get trapped in your own truth. It's like somebody who said to me, another lawyer I met who wanted to write about his childhood. And I said, most of our lives have been largely uneventful. You better do some what ifing in your story. You know, if you want to call it fiction, but if you want to call it a memoir, then go ahead and tell me your story. But we tend to think that our life stories are huge and earth-shattering sometimes, but maybe some incidents are. But my childhood was, I'm incredibly grateful for it because it gave me freedom like you wouldn't believe. When I was a boy growing up in Montreal, I had plenty of time to dream. There were so many crazy characters on the street where we lived. There was violence. There was children having children. There was alcoholism. There was violence. I saw a guy get his cheek cut in the garage one time. Just come here, you. Just slice into his cheek. Rats running under your floor. There were more rats on the street than anything else. I used to see them at night. There'd be hundreds of them running into the foundation of the apartment building we lived in, you know. So it was pretty, anyway, but my brother and I and my sister, we had food, we had love, we had the best family we could possibly have, you know. That's how I look at it, you know. Really, my parents tried their best, and that's how I look at it today. Yeah. Anybody else? Questions? Yes.
Write every day.
Yes, I just about every day, except for I write in the mornings. I go to the gym in our condo building. I like to work out 5 days a week, and then I write for about 3-4 hours. Then I'm useless between 1 and 2. I can't even have a proper nap, you know, between 1 and 2. So I go out and do stuff, you know. Sometimes I write in the afternoon, especially if I have a book coming out. I feel like I'm 17 all over again, you know. It's fantastic, you know. I laugh at myself about all that. You know, when this book came out, I carried it around for 3 days and I'm smelling the paper like this, smelling it. And just, you know, I tease my sister or my daughter about how she shuffles cards. You know, she's very good at it, but I do that with my new books. So. Yeah. So it's a struggle sometimes being a writer. It's not always easy, but it sure is damn invigorating, boy. You know, you get up after and you're done, you say, that's good, man. You've just grown maybe a centimeter or 2, you know? So it's kind of good that way. Anybody else? Questions? Yes.
Can you tell us about the similarities and the differences between writing flash fiction versus writing a novel?
Okay, good question. Some of you have read Mother Wild. They have copies tonight if you're interested. Big novel to a big story with a beginning, middle, and end. And this is a book of moments, and there's just a little narrative arc to it. Okay, as I mentioned earlier tonight, it's a different kind of writing. I like this because I don't know. I've always had an insatiable curiosity about human behavior. I've always, and the older I get, it's still there. It hasn't dimmed. I've always been incredibly curious about people. It doesn't mean I'm an intellect or anything. It's just that I'm just damn curious, I guess. The difference between this and this, at least with this, I could take a break between stories and just, you know, come back to it later. With this, with my big novel, they hired an editor to work with me to do this book. I got to the end and I said to him, hey, look, this company's paying you a lot of money to help be my editor. Help. I can't finish a story. I didn't know how to finish it. He says, no, I'll give you 4 days and I'll come back and I'll bet you'll find a way to end the story. And I said, what? You're getting paid some good bucks to help me. He says, no, 4 days. And sure enough, by the third day, I said, I got it. He phones me up 4 days later and says, hey, I bet you got the answer. I said, yes, I do. Because I love open endings, and there is an open ending to this. Those of you who have read this book, some of you may have not, but these are easier to do than these, but yet this is harder too, because you have to be very succinct with language, very, very careful with the kind of language you use. And it's not easy. It's not easy to write them. I have another book of these ready to go too. It's, yeah, anyway, you might hear about it in the next year or two. Yeah. And a novel. I'm working on another novel, 2 novels, actually. One's almost done. Yeah. So I'm going to keep doing this till I dribble out of the side of my mouth. Okay.
Maybe next week.
Yeah. How about tomorrow? Anybody else? Feel free. Yes.
Can you tell us something about your upcoming novel?
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit superstitious. Yeah. It's silly superstition. It doesn't make any intellectual sense at all. It's just that I'm a little bit superstitious. That's all it is. It's about a guy who's, anyway, anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Don't be shy. One of the best questions when I go hear readers, other writers I know in Canada, when they read from their new books, I ask them, what surprises you most about the process of writing this book? All right, Ken, ask yourself that question. You've now been a witness to my pure insanity, okay? So actually, I love that question because it's a wide open question. What surprised me about writing this thing was I like the way my imagination is still alive and well, and that I can tell a story or a moment. And I like that. I was also surprised that the editorial board, when they saw this book, the owner of the press says, we're doing Ken Rivard's book. And this is before no editing was done. So he calls the shots. He's a guy about my age, probably, but he has an editorial board below him. And one of the guys said, no, he needs to fix up this. You tell this Ken Rivard he's got to fix this story and that story. And you know what? That young guy was right. Every writing needs, and every piece of writing needs editing, you know. And I'm also surprised at the sheer joy I get when a book comes out. I'm not kidding you about being 17 again. That's exactly how I felt a week and a half ago when I got this in my hands. It's sheer, utter joy. I thought, holy shit. Pardon me. Whoa. This is great, you know. And then, yeah, anybody else? I don't know if I'm answering the questions or am I being evasive or, yeah. Yes, sir.
Ken, you mentioned these stories are built on or inspired by actual images that you witnessed.
Yes.
There's a lot of stories in this book.
Yes.
So logistically, you know, when you get back to your hotel room, do you write something down? Do you scribble? Like, what do you remember or remind yourself to elaborate on something?
Every day, I'm struck by something about somebody. It may be their pain. It may be their shyness or bashfulness. It may be their incredible confidence. Their emotional intelligence could be up there, right? That kind of stuff. And I'll say, why is he behaving this way? I look at the big smile on his face and I watch his shoulders are back. He's incredibly articulate, intelligent when he talks. And I'll say, man, wonder why is he behaving this way? This is great. This is magic. The guy in the bike, the very first story in here, that's how the book started. With one guy on a beat up old bicycle with a Barbie doll with a patch on the eye. And that's the image I started with. Every story in here has at least one image that brought the story to fruition. You know, yeah. Yeah. How do I remember all that? Like in the hotel room or something? I don't. I write down a line. I might write down a line or two and say, okay, I'll use that. I have a folder this thick of ideas. I have too many ideas for books. I have just too many. I'll never do it in my lifetime. So that's the fun part of it. Because you say, okay, what am I going to do today? It's like being in a candy store, you know? Oh man, look at this. Here's an idea. Here's another idea, you know? All I know is that I've probably been a writer all my life and I didn't even know it till I was around 12 or 13. That's it. That's all I know. I know who I am and what I am, you know? That's a great sense of humility too, in a way. Anyway, I'll get off my orange crate here. Okay. Yes. Sure.
Canal. Why canal? Is it because Montreal has a canal? Is it?
Well, yeah, there's the canals in Montreal. I'm originally from Montreal. There's canals in Montreal. There's canals in Paris and San Antonio, Texas. Calgary has an irrigation canal that goes all the way down to Chestermere, but it's primarily used as a waterway. I checked it out because the media people, my publicist, Ken, she said, Ken, are there any canals in Calgary? I said, I'm sure there are. And there are. But there's bike paths on either side. You don't see homeless people washing their clothes in the tree anywhere over the canal, or you don't see that because the climate here is just not suitable for homeless people that way. Why canal? Why not?
So it doesn't have like some
Symbols, some heavy symbolic meaning, maybe? That's a good question. You're under arrest. I don't know. It's just the context of the canal. It was intriguing to me because there are so many things that go on. Recently in Paris, they emptied this canal and they found, you know what they found in there? Shopping carts. There's a story about a shopping cart in here, a bike. They found all kinds of things, a car, part of a car, bodies, you name it, anything you can think of. So here I am reading up anything that comes up on canals. I want to read about because of what goes on around the canal. It's the life around the canal that fascinates me. And canals can be really stinky places. You know, the water's not that clean. It's pretty stinky stuff. Oh yeah. In fact, in one of the canals, a guy fell in accidentally. He'd lost his watch. His watch fell off and he died from toxic poisoning. Yeah. Just, it's amazing, you know. Why the canal? It all started with the guy in the bike, that one image. Yes.
How often do you walk this canal in Hawaii?
Oh, probably 5 times a week. Yeah, and then other canals I've researched. It's not just Hawaii Canal, because you'll see there's some stories in here. You'll say that couldn't have happened in the Hawaiian Canal. It might have happened in Paris or Amsterdam. Even the canal, the cover. I love the cover on here. It's really elegant. And the publisher said to me, "Can you guess where this is from, Ken?" He says, "I'm not going to tell you." I said, "What?" He said, "I don't want the readers to know. Let them make up their own place where your book takes place." I love that. I like the mystical part of it, the magical part. It adds more magic to the book. Because people have asked me, many people have asked me. I got some interview with media on that, and they said, "Okay, Ken, is that from Ontario somewhere? There's weeping willow trees in there," or, you know, they're trying to figure it out. It's like little detective stories for all the readers. It's kind of fun. So you decide for yourselves. And as far as which stories are absolutely me, as a question that was answered earlier, I'll let you find out for yourself. Okay. I'd rather leave it that way. And there's probably 4 or 5 that are blatantly me, you know. But writers are allowed to do that. You know, we can do what you want, really. Anybody else have comments or questions? Any story you really, could these stories really happen, do you think, around a canal? The stories I read to you, or are they credible enough anyway? Or, yeah, maybe. Eh? Yeah, that's my question to you. When you read my book, if you could make the stories your stories and say, yeah, this might happen, even though that Ken Rivard's a bit wild, he's a little crazy, but, you know, could these happen? That's the magical question I'd like to ask my readers. And by the way, it's really nice to meet some of my readers who've read my other books tonight. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to meet my readers, people who've read my other books and stuff. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. You know what? If you want to stick around and chat, I can sign your book. And thank you so much to each and every one of you for coming tonight. Much appreciated. Okay.